Okay, let's talk about what about we got a lightweight fight, Shakur Stevenson, top ranked card. Shawn, what do you think about this fight going in? Yoshino is the opponent. What do you expect?
I don't know much about Yoshino, but
Me
I
neither, but
just it's and that's why I always say I was just saying this last night. I say promoters do a bad job at promoting the guy you don't know
mhm.
because I'll tune in because it's Shakur Stevens, or I might say, well, Shakur got this. I'll wait till it's another big name in the ring, and you may miss out on a good fight. I think that's what we had in Lomachenko's last fight. I think his opponent was under promoted. And when he got in the ring and it was a hard fight, everybody's saying Lomachenko lost it. No, Lomachenko didn't lose it. It's just his opponent was much better than you guys knew about. And
Yeah.
this is much more was a much more competitive fight than y'all expected. But it's the same thing with the fight with Shakur. I mean, all of the promotion is driven towards Shakur. Give people a reason to watch this fight. If people know what they're gonna get, then they may not tune in. You know, I had the same conversation with Samson over the weekend at the fight against Caleb Plant and David Benavidez. He said what you said was great that he was gonna get knocked out. I said, I never said that. He said, well, it was great because it's gonna make people who weren't gonna watch this fight watch it. And it's like, even though I don't want to promote like that, and even though you don't want to say, oh, Shakur's gonna get knocked out, give us a reason to be interested in Oshuna because if we're not interested in him, we may not watch the fight. You know?
Yeah, and to bring up, look it up, my man Shawn. He's 16-0, 12 KOs. His last fight, he knocked out Nakatani.
That's big. That's pretty big.
So yeah, that's big because he's a problem. I don't know, Shawn, if you remember Nakatani.
Yeah, is Oshino Japanese?
I think so.
Yes, yeah, from
Yeah, I
Tokyo.
mean, and even with the like, they all have a similar style. Expect them to be kind of all over the place and
Hmm.
try to rough up Shakir. I mean, I think that is one recipe that could help in beating Shakir. Is you got to be on him, roughing him up, and not giving him one punch or two punches to slip. He'll slip the first two, and he's got a great counter after that. You know, so throw
Yeah,
threes and fours, and that's one recipe to at least get you started at trying to beat him. You know, something my dad told me what taught us when we were young. He said how you beat a counter puncher is by throwing combinations. They
Mhm.
can counter one punch, they can counter two, but can they counter three and four? And then what you do from there is you apply the pressure. Can they counter and keep up with the pressure? You know, so I expect something like that from Ashuno, given and especially given the fact that I've never seen him. Now I rely on what I've seen from other Japanese fighters, and
yeah.
we all do. I've seen this time and time again. Different regions, different countries, like what's bred in our regions, in our areas of the country and of the world.
So, kind of going back to what you said, do you ever, or did you ever, when you were a fighter facing a counter puncher, did you ever kind of throw the first two and miss purposely, knowing that, maybe you could land the third and fourth? Was that ever something you thought
My
of?
my dad came up with this concept: first, second, and third combination. So the first combination was to back them up. The second combination was to make them go either left or right. And the third combination was the combination that was supposed to land. And when you look at me at 35 years old, you say, oh man, he's too young. Why did he retire? Well, that kind of work put output and even from a mental standpoint, I was tired, you know?
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with my dad. Like, imagine having to do everything that I did just to set up the offense that you wanted me to set up. All the while, something's coming back at me too. It just was a lot. But again, to answer your question, yeah, we threw a first combination that wasn't supposed to land, a second combination that wasn't supposed to land, and then the last 2 to 3 punches that we threw were the punches that, in our mind, were supposed to always be the ones that landed. So, I mean, you do the math right there. We were throwing 3, 4 punches that we were intentionally just trying to set you up for the last 2 to 3 to land.
Hmm.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, and that's why I always say, like, my dad flies under the radar in terms of how good of a coach he was. You gonna do it? Cool. In terms of how good of a coach he was, because to have that kind of concept and no one ever figured that out, it says a lot about my dad understanding me and what my abilities were, and then being able to turn them into something that people either couldn't handle, and if they did, they had a hard night handling it.
So if you're Shakur, let's say everything goes well Saturday night, you win the fight in convincing fashion. What route would you take if you're Shakur? Do you go undisputed or do you go for the winner of Tank and Ryan?
I think Ryan, excuse me, I think Shakir's gonna go undisputed, and why not? Definitely, especially if that's a plan of his. If a goal of his is to be undisputed, you stay exactly where you at, and you go undisputed at 135, and you put that stake in, and then you start handling some real business after that. Not to say that that's not real business, but I mean, you after you get undisputed, then you got some real monsters to deal with.
But if you're Devin, do you give Shakur that fight?
Um, I mean, if you're Shakur, you successful against Lomachenko, what do you do after that? And,
Hey,
and I mean, you asking the wrong guy, because look at me. Like, I never took any steps backwards.
Yeah, that's true.
We had to fight with Granados. That was the only fight we could get. We had to fight with there was maybe one other name out there
Sebastian
that
Formella,
wasn't for me. It was
COVID.
Miller was all we could get, but when you saw me in the ring with Andre Berto, it was the next best thing. There was nothing more that I could do. But he was the biggest name, toughest opponent at that point in time. And the list goes on from there. So it's hard to ask me, and that's why my dad would always say, you can't let a fighter do. They're fighters. They're always gonna want the meanest, toughest, the biggest, the best, and that may not always be the best decision. So that's why you allow the managers to do their job when that fighter says, "No, nah, man, give me Shakir," and they say, "Well, we got 2 other paychecks we can get before Shakir. Just settle down, young man. You'll get to him, and you play your cards right. And when you get in the ring with Shakir, it'll be the most money that you've ever made in a fight, and that's what you want. When those two get in the ring, Devin and Shakir, they both should be making the most money that they can make, and the most money that they've ever made right there in that point in time. They should have the most sponsors
Mhm.
and collaborations that they can have at that point, and they should be fighting in the biggest stadium that they can fight in at that point. Everything's supposed to be optimal. When I fought Errol, everything was optimal. When I fought Keith, everything was optimal. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's how this thing is supposed to work.
Well, that's gonna do it for another Fight Media guy. Well, that's gonna do it for another Fight Media. Well, that's gonna do it for another Fight Media video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy Matt Nabong with another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all. Thank you guys for the constant support. Salute to y'all always. It's been your boy.